I'm Lucas Martell. You might know a short film I did a while back called Pigeon Impossible. I also did a lot of podcasts that went along with that, these little short 2 to 3 minute videos showing people how to do certain parts of animation and coming up with ideas, a bunch of different stuff. But currently I'm working on a new short film called The Ocean Maker. And I'm doing a bunch of stuff. One thing we've launched is an Indiegogo campaign along with that. And in particular, I am doing a master class that is going to be really good for students, people wanting to do shorts. Um, it's a really great thing. And recently, I got a chance to sit down with Geoff Marslett's advanced animation class at the University of Texas. And the conversation went very, very well with the students, so I thought I would post up a few little bits of it. This is going to be kind of like the stuff that we'll be covering the master class, except this was a very loose sort of Q&A sort of situation. So the master class will be more structured than this. But like I said, I thought that it was worthwhile to sort of put it out there. So here is our conversation about getting a job in animation.
If you talk to people, especially in the animation or the visual effects industry at the big studios, they will tell you to specialize in one thing. That's pretty old school, and that is something that, and you can disagree with me if you want, but that is something that those gigs are going away fast. Where the job openings are for people who can do not necessarily everything, but at least they've got one area that they're really strong in and maybe 2 or 3 other supporting areas. So for instance, for a character animator, if you can also rig a character and maybe do some design work, some 2D hand-drawn stuff, that is going to make you so much more likely to get a much longer-term job and help you break into the industry, because at this point, especially with Animation Mentor and the rate that they're putting out students who are solely focused on character animation, the character animation market for that particular type of animation, the high-end 3D studio work, that is a very, very saturated market right now. But if you can do something even close to that level, but you can also do some character setup and a couple of these other little side things, you can start approaching a lot of the smaller and mid-sized places, which that's worth saying because no one these days goes straight from school to a place like Disney, DreamWorks, Pixar. Does anyone even have a desire to work at a place like that, or are you focusing more on, okay, a couple people? Yeah. Do you guys, was it just you two, or was there anyone else who was saying that? What are the areas that you're specifically focusing on that you would want to do at a place like that? Character modeling? Yeah. How about you? Character design? Okay, so you're looking at more like Leica then. Okay, cool. And okay. Okay, yeah. Yeah. Well, one thing I will specifically say then, for the two of you who are thinking about character design, that is one of the most desired positions. And I mean, I'm saying this as a motivation to sort of like, you've got to be really, really good at that specific thing, but augmenting that with a couple of other things. And character design, especially if you can design the character, if you can model it, and if you can rig it yourself. I know rigging is a much more technical process.
Rigging is something, it seems like, because it is so hard. If you
Yeah.
rigging, you really open up your...
Yeah. Rigging in particular, although rigging is actually starting to get a little bit more challenging because of all the auto rigging that's getting done.
Yeah.
Rigging used to be a very, very tedious process, and now there's a lot more tools that are out there. There's still a lot of rigging work that's being done. But areas that are much harder to find people are effects. I'm talking especially like particle effects. If anyone wants to take the time to learn Houdini, you will be paid very, very well for just knowing how to do anything in Houdini. Trey's been picking up Houdini, and he's like, it's so powerful, but oh man, it's a really technical and very weird program. But character rigging, anything with some tech is a big, big help. And so I always recommend that even if you just take like a summer class in scripting, not only does that open you up to the possibility of working at a place and doing doing a little bit of pipeline stuff, games. I've been playing around a lot with Unity. It's JavaScript. It is really not that hard at all to do. I took just like a 6-month class in school. That is one of those things that if you can pick that up, that will automatically sort of like bump you up a couple of notches in terms of not only what you can do, but make it much more possible for you to get hired. I know you probably on your film you had a lot of people writing code and doing some custom one-off stuff. So
2 or 3 of us. We just have very many people, but for our film that was a lot of people.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't mean that you have to focus on that, or that needs to be the thing that you're doing. But there are a lot of those things where just spending a couple months just learning a little bit. I always use that example, sort of like here's the curve, of sort of like, if you can do 10% of it, you're up to here. It's once you get up to the top, you've got to like be totally committed to making it from taking your skills from 98% of the way there to 99% of the way there.
It's amazing how that last few percent is really what'll separate you from not getting the job to getting the job.
Yeah. But if you are going more, I guess what I'm saying is that if you are going more of like picking up a couple of extra skills, even just getting 20% of the way there, you'll be able to do a ridiculous amount of stuff. And you might find that, hey, suddenly this rotoscoping thing that I've been doing by hand for many, many months, I can beat it with a couple of lines of code and not just code, but After Effects scripting. There's a lot of other tools that are built into all the packages right now. So.
Yeah. And After Effects scripting is not terribly difficult,
mm-hmm.
and it's a good one to pick up for even smaller jobs.
Yeah.
That your bosses basically won't have any idea how to do it.
Yep.
So even if you're not great, you know a lot more than your boss.
Yeah. Even most of the 3D packages, if you're using Maya, whenever you do something, there's a window that's echoing all the commands. You don't even have to know how to script. Just see what it does whenever you do something and copy and paste it. Like there you've got a script. Like that one little trick. And in fact, there's one of my little podcasts is about just that. It's like it's scripting in 3 minutes. It's sort of like the poorest man's approach that you can possibly do to that. Yeah. So I'm realizing getting kind of down to technical standpoints here. Yeah. Well, that's also one of those things that a lot of smaller shops will be using that. Right now, it depends what you're doing. Any particle work that you do, that's something that's got more of an outlet out there. Effects animators are, in particular, they're always challenging to find. Houdini, Fume. Most of the liquid stuff that's getting done is getting done in, is it Naiad?
I haven't worked with it at all.
Yeah. There's a lot of those other packages out there, and it's less about specifically what package you use when it comes down to that stuff, and more that you've kind of got your toolkit that I know, like, okay, if I want to do a really good explosion, I can hop over to Fume, which is coming to Maya, which will make your life a lot easier once that gets there for stuff like that.
Are they going to put the full-blown, do you know, is it full-blown?
I don't know.
Yeah.
But there is a lot of stuff, obviously, to keep up with that in terms of like what software is being used. And once you're out in the real world and hopefully get a job, it's also worth saying that almost across the board, it's a freelance industry right now, especially coming straight out of school. Is that I don't want to.
I think it's going. I mean, I think the funny thing is this is where 3D and video games really overlap.
Yeah.
It's changing right now that 3D animating for film and TV is a little further down this path than video games, but they're quickly moving towards everything being a freelance the same way it is working on as production on set. Yeah. That it used to be you got hired into an animation company, you got hired into a video game company, and you were hired on.
Yeah.
It was essentially your permanent job. But even that started moving towards then they worked 2 years on a game, and then they let everybody go.
Mm-hmm.
The company went out of business, became a new, and that's I think moving now to just you're not hired with any expectation of being on staff after that project is done.
Yeah.
So I think that is the model. I think I think that's where anyone who's doing visual effects right now should assume they're moving towards that.
Yeah.
Model. So yes, I totally agree.
That's where and once again, this is not to scare anyone who's wanting to get in there, but it's good to just sort of know what the landscape is looking like because
you're probably going to be on a project by project basis.
Yeah. And so a lot of it's going to come down to that you almost kind of have to get to the point where you're basically running a small business. It's just you. But, learning a couple of those little business things can make once again, just learning a little bit of that business stuff can really, really save you and make it much more easy for you to float around between these couple of different jobs. Austin in particular seems to be, I don't know much about what the game industry is like. There's not much animation, like as far as like the animation stuff in town. There's very, very little. So for me, all of my jobs is like, oh yeah, a month here, a couple weeks here. Sometimes I'll bring in a larger gig and I'll actually hire a couple of freelancers. But it's a pretty small community. So especially in Austin, if you're looking at staying in Austin, knowing a couple of skills is pretty essential.
Yeah, because you may not find any job with doing the one thing you normally do.
Yeah. But that's not. But it's also it can be a stepping stone to the thing that you want to do. So just getting your foot in the door, doing whatever you can, is probably the most. I would say
I think that's a super important point. I think I've said this to you guys before. Even if you're thinking about working at Pixar or somewhere, and you may not be super excited about textures or lighting or some of the less exciting jobs, but a whole bunch of other people aren't as excited about those either. So it's not that you can get a job. And once you turn out to be reliable, that's almost as good as you. I mean, that's almost the most important.
Yeah.
You have to know how to do the other jobs, but producers are going to be much happier to hire someone they already know and counted on.
Yeah.
You've got your work done, even if they're taking a chance on you trying a new skill set.
Almost every job that anyone gets in the industry is from a referral, which does make it a little bit tougher to get your foot in the door. But once you're in the door, as you get to know people pass jobs around, and like the studio community is very, very tight knit, and so everyone knows or if they don't, we don't all know everyone, but chances are if you talk to any person at one of the larger studios, they've got a friend who's at DreamWorks, Pixar, Disney, DD, a couple of the other ones that are all out of business now, which it's a little, but there's a lot of, it's especially with all that stuff where those shops have gone out of business, that doesn't really affect any of you as an individual, because most of you are going to be freelancers anyway. So instead of going to DD, you're going to go to one of the other shops that opened up right in that place. So as an individual, especially coming into this market or coming into the world, I don't think that's really going to affect you a whole lot. So don't worry too much about any of that if you're wanting to do that.
If you're 45 now and have been doing this for a while, it's a lot more of a stress.
Yeah, especially if you've got a family in a certain place, and unfortunately, a lot of the industry right now is also very mobile. Yeah. So there's a lot of travel, and it could be very, very cool. I mean, I spent 6 weeks living in Greenwich Village in New York last summer, which was really cool.
Yeah.
But Montreal in the winter is not so much fun. So.
But it might also be where you end up going.
Who knows? Yeah. So you just kind of have to be open and just sort of like, be open to sort of like going where that stuff takes you and all that. I know you had mentioned stop motion. I don't know. I've actually got a couple of friends at Leica. I don't know what that's like out there. The great thing about it is that there are not a lot of people who can do it. So if you know how to do it, then like that already, it's not like you're trying to fight. You aren't trying to stand out amongst a throng of people. The downside is that there's only probably. Does Aardman have anything going on right now?
They must right now, but since the pirate thing, I don't know what I haven't heard anything about what they're working on now.
Yeah.
I'm sure they're in pre-production on something, but they probably have nothing in production
right now. There's also a couple of other places that are doing one-off stuff. A lot of it's also in Europe. So, parlez-vous le français?
Yeah.
Japanese. I'm taking Japanese.
There could be some Japanese stuff.
There is.
Yeah.
That Momo thing, the brown character is on a bunch of stuff.
Okay. I guess I don't know that one, but yeah.
I didn't know that it was an animation thing
Yeah.
afterwards, but
Yeah.
And it's coming back. The TV world is doing a lot more stop motion than say 5 years ago. Or
Yeah.
10 years ago. So there are some small studios in Burbank and such that are doing it again.
It's making a comeback. Yeah.
And the kind of neat thing of some of those small studios that are doing some of that TV stuff is you are a little more likely to not have to keep finding a new job. Some of them, they're 50-person businesses, and if you get to one of those jobs and you don't leave, you may not be making the top money in the business, but they're probably not going to boot you.
Yeah.
So.
And maybe sort of bringing bringing it all full circle, that's also one of the arguments for having your own project as well. Whereas Pigeon Impossible, it really started off, actually the whole time through it was something that I was doing in my off hours. There were absolutely times where that meant 50, 60-hour weeks. I tried to work on it a little bit every day. So even if it was just sitting down for an hour in the evening and at least making sure that it never stopped, it was always pushing forward a little bit. But especially if you are in this freelance world, you're trying to get gigs, the number one thing that'll make you stand out is that if you have something that's beyond just a reel, and if you have your own short film, it shows that you not only can do maybe the one particular thing that you're applying for, but you know at least enough about all the other parts of the process in terms of, for stop motion, that you know at least a little bit about lighting and camera work, which, not that you would necessarily need to know it for that job, but being able to communicate with the other people who are working at that studio, a short film really, really shows that off. Plus, it's also just a great demo piece. If you could do something that gets seen by a lot of people, like you're already, a lot of the jobs, even the one that I got in New York, was that they had seen Pigeon Impossible still. So like it's a short film, putting some time into that is definitely worthwhile. And who knows, maybe if you really go for it and you want to go that route, the best thing to do is to have your own project and your own intellectual property, your own IP that you can do something with.
Well, I hope you found this useful. As I mentioned at the beginning of this, I am doing a online masterclass as part of my next short film, The Ocean Maker. So if you want to enroll for that, I'll put the URL on the video portion of this clip, but it is www.theoceanmaker.com, all one word. And there you can enroll in the class. It's specifically focused on making animated short films, but we're going to cover a lot of business stuff as well. We're going to cover coming up with ideas. We're going to talk some tech stuff. So it's going to be a very, very good class if you're interested in this sort of thing. So thank you so much, and I hope you'll check it out.